Why don't you take a seat and tell me what appears to be the problem? Hello and welcome to another exciting new episode of Consult. I don't know why I keep doing this, but I just look interesting that way. Consult the Doctor, where we're going to go over a couple of questions I've received about fountain pens, and we're going to dive straight in. I'm just writing down a timestamp. Do stub/italic nibs take a little getting used to? That might depend a little bit on who you ask, but in my mind, yes, they do. And I can say a few things about that. One thing is that an italic nib and a stub nib are much less forgiving of the angle under which you write with them than round tipped fountain pens are, fine, medium, broad, whatever. Now, of course, even a round, so when I say round, what I mean is a nib with rounded tipping, so again, extra fine, fine, medium, broad, double broad, whatever, but not a square italic or a squarish rounded off stub. The round nibs also are picky as to the angle. However, they are typically, relatively speaking, I think a little bit more forgiving. If I want to hold this round pen like this, or if I hold it like that, it's going to be okay. But this minor difference for an italic nib may already be an issue because it's an italic nib. It's flatter. And if I lift that off the page, it's not going to write so well. So I would say, in short, yes, they take some getting used to, especially if you're used to round nibs. The second thing that I found, and this may be an idiosyncrasy, but I thought I would point it out anyway, and maybe people have thoughts about that as well, is I have found, at least when I started out with italic nibs, stub nibs, etc., that my hand got tired quicker. And I think that was because I was making so much effort to keep that angle completely consistent. Because if you don't get the maximum amount of line variation out of those nibs, right? It's really breathe a hole to the ceiling, etc., and it has to stay that way. So that's something I have found. I found it more tiresome to write with italic nibs. Now, my favorite italic nib right now is on my Denitrio Mikado, and that was tuned by Mike Masayama. And that nib is superb, incredibly smooth. And that I don't find tiring to write with at all. So I just wonder if that's me or if other people have maybe experienced that as well. But I do think it's interesting. I find those nibs a little bit more high maintenance in usage than that round nibs are. So if you were trying out these nibs, and that's where this question came from, and you found it a little tough, I don't think that's you. I think that's very normal. Okay. We move on to the second question, timestamp. So I found this one quite interesting. And it's a question not just to me, but to the public. So please join in on this. I've expurgated a little bit, but I used to be very protective of my pens and the wear of nib tipping. But I've come to realize that pens are transitory, and basically I may as well just use them. Do others feel that way? Well, I can't speak for all others, but I can speak for myself. Again, join in the comment section, please. I think that's the way to do it, and I think I've both hinted at that and made it very explicit that my pens are used. And I own a couple of pens that are really fairly expensive, but I use those too. What would be the point of me spending a lot of money on a fountain pen, which is an object made to be used, and then not using it? Now, your mileage may vary. To some people, it's a matter of, no, I purchase a pen, I keep it sealed in the box, I put it in a vault, and then 15 or 20 years later, I sell it at a profit. Well, that's one way to do it, and I'm not trying to sound judgmental. That is one way to do it. That's one approach to the use of luxury fountain pens. For me, that's a fairly silly use, and I know that does sound judgmental, but to me, that's silly. I understand you can make money that way, but for me, that's not where I get the enjoyment of using fountain pens. Again, using fountain pens, not buying them to keep them in the box. So for me, using pens is very important, regardless of the price. Doesn't matter whether it's a $5 pen or a $5,000 pen. I don't own a $5,000 pen. But just saying, I would use them all, and I do use them all. Everything I have gets used. And I think that is the juice to me. That is the enjoyment of using those pens. So I think that your realization is they are transitory. And even the most expensive pen at some point may wear out, right? Maybe you can buy another nib for it or whatever. But I mean, I think you have to do an excessive amount of writing. I mean, an exceptional amount of writing to wear out the tipping of a good nib. I'm not talking about a $2 steel nib with just a folded, but I mean actual properly tipped nib. To wear out that tipping in your lifetime would require a lot of writing. And I don't have numbers, but I don't want to say something that sounds stupid, but my intuition would say a couple 100,000 pages. I mean, that is a lot. That tipping material is so hard. For you to wear that out, that would require daily use of multiple hours for years on end, every day of the week. So I think you're relatively safe with that. But even then, your pens can break, they can wear out, but at least you're using them and having fun with them. That's what I would say. The next question I thought was interesting. I have two slightly more philosophical questions here. To what do you attribute the growth of the popularity of fountain pens? I've been collecting for 10 years and I'm noticing this sudden surge with all kinds of companies offering pens, etc. Yeah, so do I, and I think it's a trend of our time, and I think there's quite a lot to say about this. So I think one thing that has helped tremendously is the internet, which may sound a bit counterintuitive, but bear in mind that a lot of the resources about fountain pens can be found online. Of course, there are books, there are excellent books, like say the Andreas Lambrou books, superb works of reference. But think of resources like the Fountain Pen Network, Fountain Pen Geeks, fountain pen groups on Facebook, YouTube videos on fountain pens. I think all those phenomena have contributed towards not only an understanding of fountain pens, but a popularization of fountain pens, and this is very important, I think, a sense of community. Let me rephrase it, I had been using fountain pens for years without realizing that there was a whole community of fountain pen users. It's not just a matter, I mean, I'm trying to come up with a slightly silly analogy here to hopefully illustrate a point. I don't know if there is a forum on slotted spoon users. I don't know if people who use slotted spoons form a community. Maybe they do, and I'm not aware of it. Check out the Slotted Spoon Network right now. But again, I'm exaggerating a bit to get a point across, but there is a fountain pen network, and it is a network, right? I did not know that existed, and if that applies to me, then I'm sure that applies to others. And I've heard these kinds of stories from people that they've used pens for a while, and then they found out there is this whole community of people who identify as being part of that community and who consider fountain pens to be such a important facet of their identity, that they want to be part of the community, that they want to participate in forums and websites and watch videos and that kind of stuff. So I think that has really made pens more popular. That is one aspect. Another aspect that I think is also quite important. It has a handle, but I don't use it because I live on the edge. I think another aspect that is very important is that there seems to be a general trend towards analog things, and I think that has spawned from using digital devices, digital media so much, right? A lot of our work days are spent on word processing or spreadsheets or emailing or PowerPoint or all kinds of digital things. And then I think it can be very nice to take a step back and use something analog, and that can be a fountain pen. That can be the sort of mechanical keyboards that people use, which may not be exactly analog, but I think you know what I mean. It is a more mechanistic device than a standard computer keyboard. Or think of something even more clearly analog, a typewriter. We see a massive surge of people want to use typewriters. And I think when you look at it objectively, in many ways, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but in many ways, typewriters are an inferior system to word processors simply because there's no backspace, there are no multiple fonts, all that stuff is not there. But then why would you use it? Well, because you have a need. I don't have that need, but a lot of people do have that need, and I think it ties into a psychological phenomenon that also underlies fountain pen use, namely that using a typewriter, because you don't have a backspace key, because you don't have that ability to quickly edit a text, to correct typos, etc., you have to slow down. And the same thing goes for a fountain pen. You can type something quickly, or you can take a little bit longer and hand write it. And I think that people increasingly feel a need to slow down. Our life is very fast-paced. A lot of pressure is put on us. The world is a difficult place to navigate in many ways. So then we can slow down. We can sit down with a notebook and a fountain pen and just use it and have fun. And I think that matters, because I think it is something that people long for. And I think those two things, the fact that there is a community and that you can now find that community easily and may identify as part of that community, which we know is a psychological need that people have. They want to belong to a certain group. I think that is one aspect, and the internet has just made that more available to us. And I think in addition to that, there is that need to slow down and take it easy, and whether that is with fountain pens or typewriters or analog cameras and developing film and all that stuff, all of that has a, I don't want to get too new agey, but has a sort of meditative aspect to it, because it forces you to slow down, and I think that is good for us once in a while to slow down. I think many of us long for that. So that would be my answer. I hope that is useful. Again, your input is much appreciated as well, right? So be sure to comment on that, please. Final question for today. Are you a deadpan humor person? Or are your videos more work than hobby for you? You seem hectic now and calmer in your older videos. I don't know if I would choose the term hectic. There's also a couple of components to this question. I think when you do anything, but not to make this discussion too broad, let's focus on fountain pen videos. That this in itself is also indirectly a fountain pen video. If you choose to record videos, put them on a medium like YouTube, then I think one thing is crucial, and that is that you find your own voice and your own style to do that in. And I'm sure it's not going to be surprising when I say I get quite a lot of messages and Facebook and email and whatever from people who want to start recording fountain pen videos, and they ask me if I have any suggestions. And that is my number one suggestion. Find your own way to do it. Because if you now start to do your videos and you say, first I'm going to show you the parts of the pen, they'll do a writing sample, they'll tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, then you have copied my format. And I'm not offended if you do imitation, flattery, etc. But then you're doing what someone else is already doing. I think it is much more interesting if you can find a way to record your videos that is unique to you. And that's one of the reasons that for example, I am very much in awe of the work of Penboy Roy, because he's incredibly creative in the way he has recorded some of his reviews, and no one else has done that in the way he has done that. I specifically remember the entire movie basically, but this is, to me, that is fun, because it's very original, it's very creative, and it shows that Roy has found his own voice and his way to do that. And I think that's really neat and impressive. So what I'm trying to get at is, are my videos now more hectic than they were before? Maybe. I don't know. What I do think is that I have found the way I want to do my videos. And there are certain things that I've changed over the years. The basic format, sure, is the same. I mean, at some point I flipped over the likes and dislikes and the writing sample. I used to do the writing sample last, and you'll hear, if you're regular, you've undoubtedly heard me mess up when I say I'm going to cover the past the panel, because then I want to say I'll tell you what I like, what I don't like, and then I'll do a writing sample. Still, that old order still sometimes almost slips out, and I have to be very aware of that. Anyway, one thing that I've received quite a bit of feedback on in the early videos is that they're too long and I ramble too much, and it's absolutely true. I know this about myself. If I tell a 5-minute story, it takes 15 minutes, and I've had this all my life, because I like to tell stories and I like to give people a context, and I think that you should also know this and you should know that, and that takes time. But when you're doing a review, I think it's important to leave your ego at the door and focus on that product. Now, that might sound a bit as if it's contradicting what I said earlier. All I'm trying to say is it's the product that you are reviewing, not you. So, in other words, you're not reviewing yourself. So what I don't find interesting is a review that first has 10 minutes on how someone purchased the pen. I personally don't care. Now, other people may enjoy that, and that's fine. I'm not trying to criticize anyone. All I'm saying is, for me and my style of reviewing, that doesn't work. I want a review to be 15 minutes tops, ideally shorter. Why? Because I want to give you the information that you need to get a feeling for that pen, and then you have to make a decision. But if I go into, and then I went into the store and it was great, and the store manager was wearing a red shirt and a yellow hat, and then he showed me this pen and he showed me another pen, and it was so much fun, and then who cares? I don't care. If I watch a review on a product on YouTube, which happens quite a lot, I don't need the whole backstory of your life and where you were born. I just want to know what you think about that product. So that's something that has changed, and that has made me try to be very aware of how much I talk about things that are not relevant. And I think I've improved a lot, because if I look at I say this without ego, but I mean, if I just objectively look at the length of the old videos and the length of the newer videos, I think they've become snappier, more to the point. And that matters to me. Now, that might be confused for a certain calmness and a more hectic way of doing it. But again, I also want to do the videos in a way that works for me, and that means certain quirks, and that means certain bad puns or certain jokes in there, because that's the way I am. So again, when I say leave your ego at the door, I don't mean turn into a robot, because you do have to show you, because that means that you are genuine in your video. But also stick to what is relevant for that product, and that's the specific balance you have to find. I hope that was a coherent story. Now, the final thing I'll say is, are you a deadpan humor person? Yeah. And I've been in situations where I said something that was meant as a joke, but people thought I was serious. Because I have apparently a serious face. Anyway, that humor is something that I try to display a bit in the videos too, because I think that a fountain pen video should be entertaining as well. You're not just reviewing a product, you're also trying to present the material in a way that doesn't make people fall asleep, right? They also have to feel that they're a little entertained. Anyway, these were just some thoughts in a more or less coherent format, I hope. That's how I think about it. Oh, that's the final question. I'll be very brief about that. Are your videos more work than hobby for you? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but I can be very frank about that. Yeah, absolutely. That's not to say that I don't enjoy it, but a lot of work goes into videos, and that's why sometimes I get a bit annoyed when people seem to be very unappreciative of the work I do. It's a lot of work. One review is multiple hours, right? Because you have to test the product, you have to take notes on all the features of the product, the price, the story behind that pen, why they designed it the way they did, which is not as pronounced in all, in some pens and other pens, but for Mont Blanc grade characters, there's a whole list of things they went through, right, when they were designing that pen. You have to share that with the viewer. That takes time. Recording the video takes time. Editing the video, rendering the video, uploading the video, creating a post on the website, creating pictures for the website. All of that takes a lot of time. And that basically has turned this into a job. Yeah. And I still like doing it. Make no mistake, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But where it started off as something that I would just do, just in between things, now I have to set aside time on weekends, and I spend considerable time on this to keep the channel going, to try and interact with people where I can. But if you get dozens and dozens of comments each day, you simply can't respond to everyone. Back in the day, I responded to every comment I received. Well, those days are over. I can't. It's impossible to keep up. With comments on YouTube, with Instagram, with Facebook, with Twitter, with emails, it's not doable. Oh, and Patreon as well, right? There's Patreon, which is a great medium and allows me to generate a little bit of financial income. I guess income is typically financial. Anyway, it allows you to get some money for the work that you do, which is fantastic. And I'm very grateful for the people who support me on that medium, but they can ask questions too. And those questions I absolutely want to answer. After all, these are people who are paying me for the work I do, right? So in no way is this a complaint. I like doing it, and I also like to have the interaction. But given that I also have a full-time job and a life and family and friends, it's impossible to interact full-time online. Again, that's not a complaint. I want to make sure that that's clear. It's not at all a complaint. I'm very happy that this channel has taken off the way it has. And I have so many fascinating interactions with people from all walks of life, all places in the world, everywhere. But yeah, it's changed a lot. There's a difference between having a channel with 10 subscribers or 56,000 plus subscribers, right? Great power, responsibility, etc. I hope this wasn't boring. Was this a boring monologue? I was really trying to be concise and give you an insight in this. Anyway, sorry if it was boring. I hope you got something from this episode of Consult the Doctor. Please leave any further questions that you may have below. They will be addressed in a future episode, sometimes in a couple episodes, depending on how many questions I receive. But I always enjoy reading them. So please continue, keep them going. I'm still having fun. Let me just re-emphasize, I'm still having a lot of fun doing this. All right? So it's none of this was negative. But if you ask a serious question, you get a serious answer from me. There we have it. I hope this was useful, and I will gladly see you later. Bye!